Maxwell Calloway's mornings began in silence, glass walls overlooking the skyline, a breakfast curated by his personal chef, and a calendar packed with boardroom wars disguised as meetings. Everything in his world gleamed. His penthouse was a monument to opulence, imported Italian marble, abstract art worth more than most people's homes, and a collection of watches that could rival a museum exhibit. Money didn't just influence his life, it defined it. He had built his empire from the remnants of his father's failing company, transforming it into a juggernaut that touched everything from real estate to technology. The world knew his name, and more importantly, it respected it at least. That's what Max told himself. Power was his currency, and he spent it freely. Politicians returned his calls. Celebrities attended his events. Competitors either fell in line or disappeared. In the world Max ruled, everyone had a price, and he had the means to pay it. But respect? That was a different matter. Max rarely heard the word no. His team operated like a well-oiled machine, executing his commands with military precision. Even the rare moments of disagreement ended with the other party conceding, sometimes through persuasion, other times through financial pressure. He thrived in this space, where control was absolute and outcomes were predictable. The structure of power kept him protected, admired, untouchable. And yet, beneath the luxury and control, something gnawed at him, an emptiness he refused to name. He didn't do emotions. Relationships, for Max, were transactional. His romantic life played out like a rotating gallery: models, actresses, heiresses, each beautiful, polished, and temporary. They came for the lifestyle, and he welcomed them, offering private jets, designer wardrobes, and front row seats to the kind of life others only dreamed of. But none stayed long. Not because he pushed them away, but because the connection never went beyond surface-level charm and perfectly filtered photographs. His friends, if one could call them that, were cut from the same cloth: billionaires, tech moguls, and legacy heirs who laughed too loudly and drank too much. Their conversations revolved around market trends, luxury acquisitions, and political influence. No one asked real questions. No one looked past the facade. Max's arrogance had long since hardened into routine. He believed vulnerability was weakness, that feelings were liabilities. He told himself that detachment was strength. But sometimes, in the rare quiet moments when the party had ended, the champagne had gone flat, and the city lights no longer dazzled, he felt the loneliness closing in like fog, silent and heavy. It was during one of these meticulously curated events, a charity gala at the Astoria, draped in gold and crystal, that something unusual happened. Max had arrived fashionably late, of course. His presence caused the usual ripple across the room: whispers, glances, subtle posturing. Cameras followed him, and attendees lined up to shake his hand or angle for a photo. He gave them what they wanted: the charming smile, the practiced small talk, the effortless charm of a man who knew the world bent around him. And then he saw her. Elena Whitaker was standing near the edge of the room, dressed in a simple black gown that didn't scream for attention, yet held it all the same. She wasn't adorned in glitter or clinging to a socialite group. She was speaking to a small circle of guests, her voice calm, her expression firm. Max didn't recognize her, which intrigued him. More than that, her posture wasn't one of someone impressed by wealth or proximity to power. She seemed unaffected. Curious, he approached. "Elena, right?" he asked, his voice smooth, expecting the usual response: nervous laughter, flattery, or at least a flicker of recognition. She turned toward him with a polite smile. "Yes. And you are?" That stopped him. Not only did she not know who he was, she didn't care. "Maxwell Calloway," he replied, surprised by how much he suddenly cared whether that name impressed her. She nodded, unbothered. "I figured you were someone important. People have been acting like the Pope walked in." He chuckled, caught off guard by her candor. "Well, I'm not exactly pious." "I didn't think you were," she said dryly, then excused herself to return to her group. Max watched her go, stunned by the brief exchange. She hadn't fawned, hadn't flirted, hadn't even lingered. It wasn't hostility, just indifference. And it unsettled him in a way that few things ever did. Later that night, back in his penthouse with the party echoing in his ears, he found himself thinking about her. Elena Whittaker. No title, no wealth he could identify, no reason for her to have stood out, and yet she had. In a world where everyone tried to impress him, her refusal to do so had become unforgettable. For the first time in a long while, someone had challenged his carefully constructed image without even trying. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, he wanted to see her again. Max's fascination with Elena begins almost immediately after their brief encounter, sparked not by attraction in the conventional sense, but by her refusal to be dazzled by his wealth and status. For someone accustomed to commanding attention and admiration simply by virtue of his fortune, Elena's indifference feels like a challenge unlike any he has faced before. She doesn't fall into the typical patterns of flattery or submission that Max's usual social circle offers. Instead, she meets him with blunt honesty and a skepticism that unsettles him. This reaction ignites a curiosity within Max, a desire to understand who Elena really is beneath the surface, beyond the fleeting moment they shared. Determined to learn more about her, Max leverages his extensive network to track Elena down. His resources make the search effortless, but the ease of the pursuit does not translate into success in winning her favor. When they meet again, Elena's response is cool and guarded. She clearly sees through the lavish gestures and the implicit power dynamics that come with his offers. Elena isn't interested in being charmed by money or extravagant gifts, and she doesn't hesitate to confront Max on his presumptions. Her directness is disarming. She calls him out for his arrogance and entitlement in ways that few have dared before. This candid confrontation shakes Max, who has always been in control of his surroundings and interactions. Elena's success as an entrepreneur is a central element of this dynamic. She has built her business from scratch, relying on her talent, resilience, and intelligence, rather than inherited wealth or connections. This background gives her a grounded confidence that contrasts sharply with Max's life of privilege. She represents a world where respect is earned through effort and merit, not purchased. Her independence and refusal to be impressed by material things force Max to reconsider the foundations of his identity and the values he has long taken for granted. She challenges not just his behavior, but the entire framework of privilege that he inhabits. Max's initial reaction to Elena's defiance is frustration. He is used to success coming quickly when he applies himself, and rejection is unfamiliar territory. However, beneath the frustration is an unfamiliar admiration. Elena's strength and principles attract him, compelling him to rethink his approach to relationships and power. Instead of attempting to overwhelm her with wealth, Max begins to make small but meaningful adjustments. He listens more and talks less, tries to see the world through her perspective, and learns to value authenticity over appearance. This shift is difficult for him. It exposes vulnerabilities and uncertainties that he has carefully hidden behind his status. The process of change is slow and uneven. Max struggles with ingrained habits and the expectations that come from his social environment. but his efforts to connect with Elena on a deeper level reveal new dimensions of himself, ones that are not defined by money or influence. As he lets go of the superficial trappings of power, he discovers that true connection requires more than just charm or wealth. It demands honesty, humility, and respect. These lessons, taught by Elena's unwavering stance, begin to crack the armor of his old identity. Despite these developments, Max recognizes that his wealth and power no longer provide the fulfillment they once did. His previous life, built around control and dominance, starts to feel hollow. The things he once believed essential for happiness now seem inadequate. Elena's presence acts as a catalyst for this internal reckoning. Her refusal to be swayed by status challenges Max to find meaning beyond material success, and to confront the loneliness that often accompanies life at the top. For the first time, he contemplates a different kind of life, one rooted in genuine connection and personal growth rather than external validation. At the heart of this evolving relationship is a tension between two worlds: Max's privileged, opulent existence, and Elena's self-made, principled path. Their interactions highlight the disparities between these realities, but also the potential for transformation that comes from understanding and respect. Elena does not seek to change Max, nor does Max expect to rewrite Elena's story. Instead, their connection becomes a space where both are challenged to grow, where Max learns to see beyond his privilege, and Elena confronts the complexities of accepting someone so different from herself. Max's journey toward winning Elena over is less about conquest and more about awakening. His obsession shifts from possession to admiration and respect. He begins to appreciate the value of struggle and the strength it takes to remain true to one's convictions. Elena's refusal to be impressed by wealth forces him to question the nature of power itself, and to explore the vulnerabilities that lie beneath his confident exterior. Through this process, Max's understanding of himself and the world broadens. Ultimately, the story captures the delicate balance between attraction and resistance, power and humility. Max's fixation on Elena is not just about her as an individual, but about what she represents: a challenge to the status quo, a mirror reflecting his limitations, and a doorway to a more authentic way of being. Their dynamic sets the stage for a transformation that goes beyond romance, touching on themes of identity, privilege, and the courage to change. In this new reality, Max begins to see that true power may lie not in dominance, but in vulnerability and the willingness to grow. Max's life had always been one of ease and certainty, buffered by layers of privilege that few could understand. But as he immersed himself more deeply into Elena's world, the stark contrasts between their realities became impossible to ignore. At first, he thought winning her over was simply a matter of matching her passions with grand gestures. Expensive gifts, elaborate dinners, invitations to exclusive galas — these were his weapons, the currency of his world. Yet Elena remained distant, unimpressed by his attempts to buy affection or approval. She saw through the superficiality, demanding something far more substantial, proof that Max cared about others beyond his own ego and wealth. This challenge shook Max. For the first time, he was forced to look beyond the polished surface of his life and confront the emptiness beneath. Slowly, he began to attend Elena's charity events, not as a guest flaunting his status, but as someone eager to learn. He listened intently to her ideas about social justice, community support, and systemic inequality — concepts that had always seemed irrelevant or even inconvenient to him. Each event was a revelation, peeling back layers of ignorance he hadn't realized he carried. However, this new engagement brought tension and conflict, especially within his business empire. The foundations of Max's wealth were built on practices that now seemed ethically questionable when viewed through the lens of Elena's cause. The very ventures that had propelled him to success were, in some ways, fueling the injustices Elena was fighting against. It was a brutal awakening, forcing Max to acknowledge the damage his companies were causing in communities and environments around the globe. The situation worsened when one of Max's largest business projects was exposed for unethical labor practices and environmental negligence. Media outlets erupted with investigations, and the public backlash was swift and unforgiving. Max's carefully curated image of success and benevolence began to crumble. Stock prices plummeted, investors panicked, and the boardroom buzzed with tension. The empire that Max had always controlled with ease was now slipping through his fingers. Elena watched this unfold with a mixture of skepticism and disappointment. To her, the scandal was proof that Max's apparent transformation was nothing more than a facade, an attempt to mask his flaws with money and influence rather than a genuine change of heart. She challenged him, questioning whether he truly understood the gravity of the issues or if he was simply scrambling to save face. Her doubts cut deeper than any public criticism, piercing the veneer of Max's confidence. Faced with this harsh reality, Max experienced a profound internal struggle. For the first time in his life, his wealth and power couldn't shield him. The illusion of control he had always taken for granted was shattered. He realized that money, no matter how abundant, couldn't solve every problem or erase the consequences of his actions. The stakes had risen beyond boardroom battles and social gatherings. This was about integrity, responsibility, and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. Max's journey became one of reckoning. He grappled with feelings of guilt, shame, and vulnerability that were foreign to him. The comfortable certainty of his old life was gone, replaced by uncertainty and the need for genuine change. He understood that if he wanted to earn Elena's respect and perhaps more importantly, restore his own self-respect, he had to move beyond performative philanthropy. He needed to embrace accountability, rethink his business practices, and commit to making amends in a way that couldn't be measured by press releases or flashy donations. Despite the chaos surrounding him, Max's transformation was not immediate or easy. He faced resistance from within his own ranks, including board members and executives who saw his newfound ethics as a threat to profit and power. His personal relationships, built on convenience and status, were strained as he distanced himself from the superficial world he once ruled. Yet, beneath the turmoil, there was a growing resolve, a recognition that true leadership meant more than maintaining appearances. It meant taking responsibility for one's impact on the world. In this crucible of crisis and change, Max found himself humbled in ways he never expected. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but it was the first time he felt a genuine sense of purpose beyond wealth and influence. The illusion of control had been broken, but in its place, there was an opportunity for growth if he was willing to seize it. Max's once mighty empire began unraveling at an alarming pace, the carefully constructed facade of success and power crumbling under the weight of long-hidden truths. For years, Max had built his business through aggressive, often unscrupulous tactics, cutting corners, manipulating numbers, and exploiting relationships to maintain his dominance. But those methods, shrouded in secrecy and veiled by charm and bravado, were finally catching up to him. The first cracks appeared quietly at first. Whispers among disgruntled employees turned into damning leaks. Investigative journalists started to piece together a disturbing picture of financial improprieties and unethical deals. Regulators took notice, and soon Max's name was plastered across headlines with allegations of fraud and corruption. The public, once enamored by his flamboyant lifestyle and confidence, now saw him as a symbol of corporate greed and arrogance. Elena had watched all of this unfold with a mix of disappointment and inevitability. She had known Max for years, had seen past the surface and glimpsed the cracks beneath his polished exterior. His charm was a mask for a man who valued power and wealth above all else, often at the expense of those around him. She was not surprised that his empire was now faltering. What unsettled her more was the speed and severity of his fall. As the scandals escalated, Max's response was predictable yet tragic. Instead of facing the mounting evidence and taking responsibility, he doubled down on denial. In a desperate bid to hold onto his dwindling influence, Max attempted to bribe officials and key stakeholders. His attempts to buy silence and loyalty backfired spectacularly. The bribes, once covered and effective, became public knowledge, further tarnishing his reputation. The media frenzy intensified, and investors who had stood by him for years began to jump ship, unwilling to risk their fortunes on a sinking ship. Max's desperation was palpable. He held frantic meetings behind closed doors, pleading with partners to stay, making promises he knew he couldn't keep. But trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore. Deals fell apart, contracts were cancelled, and the financial lifelines that had sustained his empire slowly dried up. His lavish offices emptied, staff numbers dwindled, and the grand vision he had so relentlessly pursued started to feel like a distant memory. Amid the chaos, Elena found herself in an unexpected position. She had long tried to keep her distance from Max's world, wary of the damage it could do to her own values and ambitions. But now, the situation forced her to step in. She held a unique vantage point, a chance to influence the outcome, to either salvage what remained or let the empire collapse entirely. It was a power she hadn't sought but now couldn't ignore. When Max finally reached out to her, it was with a humility she had never seen before. The arrogance that had defined him was stripped away, replaced by vulnerability. He was no longer the untouchable magnate but a man grappling with the consequences of his own making. Elena saw this moment as critical, a crossroads where Max could either continue down the path of self-destruction or choose a different way. She laid out her terms clearly. Max could either cling to his old habits of deceit and denial, condemning himself and those around him to ruin, or he could accept help. Together, they could attempt to rebuild the empire, but this time on principles of transparency, integrity, and respect. It would mean painful admissions, difficult decisions, and a long road to regain trust. But it was the only path forward. The decision weighed heavily on Max's pride battled with reality. The man who once believed money could buy anything was forced to confront the fragility of his empire and himself. For the first time, he recognized that wealth was no shield against failure or disgrace. Elena's offer was not just a lifeline for his business but a chance at redemption. The fall from grace was a bitter pill to swallow, but it sparked something in Max that had long been dormant, a genuine willingness to change. Though reluctant and uncertain, he began to see that survival required more than manipulation, it required honesty and accountability. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and skepticism, but it was real. In the aftermath, as news outlets chronicled the downfall and tentative recovery, Max's story became a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked ambition and the costs of ethical compromise. Yet it was also a story about the possibility of transformation, about the power of facing one's failures and choosing to rebuild not on illusions, but on truth. For Elena, it was a moment of vindication and responsibility. She had stayed true to her values, and now she had a chance to influence change on a scale she hadn't imagined. For Max, it was a reckoning that stripped away pretense and forced him to become a different kind of man, one who no longer saw himself as invincible, but as human and fallible, yet capable of growth. The empire might never be the same, but the fall had opened the door for a new beginning. A fragile, uncertain beginning, but one built on the possibility that even the most spectacular collapses can lead to profound reinvention. Max's financial downfall dominates headlines, painting a stark picture of a man stripped of the empire he once ruled. The glitz and glamour that surrounded his life are now shattered remnants of a past he can barely recognize. His sprawling business empire, once a symbol of power and influence, has crumbled under the weight of scandal and mismanagement. The lavish parties and high-profile connections no longer shield him from the harsh truth he has lost almost everything. The world that once bent to his will now looks away, leaving him isolated and vulnerable. In the early days after the collapse, Max clings to hope, desperately trying to salvage what remains of his fortune and reputation. He reaches out to former partners and investors, attempting to negotiate deals and restore confidence. But the reception is cold and distant. Doors that were once open slam shut without explanation. His calls go unanswered, and his presence at business meetings is met with wary glances and thinly veiled disdain. The people who once praised his vision now question his judgment, doubting whether he has the capacity to recover from such a devastating fall. The emotional toll is immense. Max wrestles with feelings of failure and humiliation. He reflects on the choices that led him here, haunted by moments of arrogance and short-sightedness. The loss extends beyond financial ruin, it is the erosion of identity and purpose. The man who defined himself through success and wealth now faces the daunting task of redefining what success means without those familiar measures. This internal conflict becomes a constant companion, making it difficult for him to move forward. Amid this turmoil, Elena remains a steadfast figure, albeit a critical one. Though she has not forgotten the flaws and mistakes that contributed to the downfall, she sees something in Max worth salvaging. Her offer to collaborate on a new initiative focused on social good arrives as a surprising beacon of hope. However, her terms are clear and unyielding. Max must set aside his reliance on money and influence. He must engage with this project on its own merits, using empathy, hard work, and genuine commitment rather than financial leverage. The challenge is daunting. For Max, accustomed to solving problems with money and authority, the prospect of starting anew on these terms feels like a humbling reset. He struggles to adapt to a world where respect and progress are earned through sincerity and action rather than wealth and power. Early attempts are marked by frustration and setbacks. He falters in understanding the communities he aims to help, sometimes reverting to old patterns of thinking and behavior. Yet, Elena's unwavering support and candid feedback guide him through these moments of doubt. Through their collaboration, Max begins to learn a new way of engaging with the world. Elena encourages him to listen deeply, to hear not just words but the emotions and needs behind them. She pushes him to put aside his ego and prioritize the perspectives of those affected by the issues they seek to address. Gradually, Max develops a sensitivity and humility previously absent from his dealings. He discovers that meaningful change requires patience, collaboration, and respect for diverse experiences. This shift in perspective brings a subtle but profound transformation. Max starts to see value in small victories and incremental progress, recognizing that rebuilding from ruins is rarely swift or spectacular. He finds purpose in the day-to-day efforts of connecting with people, understanding their struggles, and working alongside them toward shared goals. The gratification comes not from headlines or profits, but from the tangible improvements in lives and communities. At the same time, Max grapples with lingering feelings of inadequacy. Watching former friends and associates distance themselves fuels a sense of loneliness and loss. The social circles that once defined him now exclude him, and he mourns the disintegration of relationships built on convenience rather than genuine connection. Yet, even in this alienation, he begins to value authenticity over superficial alliances. The support he receives from Elena and a few others who believe in his capacity for change becomes a lifeline, a reminder that redemption is possible when grounded in honest effort. Max's journey also rekindles his sense of responsibility beyond personal ambition. He recognizes that his previous pursuit of success often overlooked the broader impact of his actions on society. The new project challenges him to balance personal growth with contributing to a cause greater than himself. This realization deepens his commitment and provides motivation to persist despite obstacles. As the work progresses, Max's transformation starts to ripple outward. Community members and collaborators notice his sincerity and willingness to learn. Slowly, trust begins to rebuild. Opportunities arise not as quick fixes or shortcuts, but as rewards for dedication and integrity. Max no longer views success as a trophy to be won but as a continuous process of growth and contribution. Elena's mentorship proves invaluable throughout this evolution. Her blend of honesty, patience, and encouragement pushes Max beyond his comfort zone, helping him to develop resilience and adaptability. Together, they navigate the complexities of social initiatives, balancing idealism with practical realities. Elena's belief in Max's potential becomes a source of strength, reinforcing the idea that everyone deserves a chance to change and make amends. In the quiet moments between challenges, Max reflects on how far he has come. The man who once measured worth by net worth now understands that true legacy lies in the impact left on others. The journey of rebuilding from ruins is neither easy nor guaranteed, but it is meaningful. Max's path forward is uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it is guided by hope rather than desperation. Through this process, Max learns that resilience is not about clinging to what was lost but embracing the possibility of what can be built anew. He realizes that strength is found not in dominance but in humility and connection. As he continues to navigate this unfamiliar terrain, Max holds on to the lessons learned and the promise of a future defined not by wealth, but by purpose and integrity. Max's transformation unfolds slowly, marked by an intense inner struggle that forces him to confront the many layers of his former self. For years, he had built his identity around wealth, power, and the constant validation that came from social status and material success. These things were more than possessions, they were his armor, protecting him from vulnerability and masking the insecurities he refused to face. But now, stripped of the easy comforts of his past life, Max feels exposed and unsteady. The allure of his old world continues to pull at him, tempting him with the promise of an easier, more familiar existence. At the same time, Max grows increasingly frustrated with his own slow progress. Change is far harder than he imagined. The habits and mindsets ingrained over a lifetime do not simply vanish because he wants them to. Every step forward feels precarious, and setbacks threaten to undo the work he has done. This tension weighs heavily on him, often leading to moments of doubt and despair. He questions whether he is capable of becoming someone different, someone better, or if he is doomed to repeat the mistakes of his past. Elena plays a crucial role in this turbulent journey. Her presence is both a challenge and a source of comfort for Max. She refuses to let him shy away from the difficult truths about himself. With patience and firmness, she pushes him to look directly at the damage he has caused not just to others, but to himself. Max had long avoided these reflections, choosing instead to surround himself with people who reinforced his ego and insulated him from accountability. But Elena insists he face the reality of how his actions hurt those who trusted him and how his pursuit of power left emotional scars. This process forces Max to wrestle with his ego, which has been both his weapon and his shield. Letting go of it is perhaps the hardest part of his transformation. He has spent a lifetime building walls around himself, and now those walls must come down. This vulnerability is unfamiliar and frightening. Yet, as he slowly begins to dismantle these defenses, Max discovers the possibility of genuine connection and healing. It becomes clear that true strength lies not in dominance or control, but in humility and openness. Part of Max's growth involves repairing fractured relationships, especially with Elena and those he had wronged. This work is painstaking and requires honest acknowledgement of past mistakes. Max reaches out to people he once dismissed or exploited, seeking forgiveness without expecting it to come easily. Through these efforts, he begins to understand the ripple effects of his previous behavior and the importance of empathy. It is a humbling experience that chips away at his former arrogance. However, old habits and familiar influences continue to pose a significant threat. Max is often confronted by old friends who represent the lifestyle he is trying to leave behind. They offer him opportunities to slip back into his old patterns, tempting him with reminders of the privileges and ease that came with his former identity. These encounters test his resolve, and Max sometimes falters, caught between the comfort of what he knows and the uncertainty of the new path he's chosen. Elena, recognizing the weight of this internal battle, encourages Max to search deeper for his true self beyond the masks he has worn. She understands that change is not a linear process and that setbacks are part of growth. Her support is unwavering but also realistic, reminding him that transformation requires more than surface-level adjustments. It demands a fundamental shift in values and self-perception. Max learns that embracing vulnerability does not mean weakness, but rather a profound form of courage. Faced with these challenges, Max comes to understand that true change involves sacrifice beyond material wealth. It requires giving up ego-driven pursuits and embracing integrity. This means prioritizing authenticity over appearance, relationships over status, and personal accountability over denial. These sacrifices are not easy, and they often come with a sense of loss. But through this process, Max begins to discover a deeper, more fulfilling sense of self. Ultimately, Max's journey is one of shedding the armor that once protected but also imprisoned him. As he lets go of old defenses and confronts uncomfortable truths, he moves closer to becoming a person defined not by what he owns or commands, but by who he is at his core. The path remains difficult and fraught with temptation, but with Elena's guidance and his own growing self-awareness, Max takes each step forward with increasing determination. The man he was is not erased, but integrated into a new identity, one that values honesty, connection, and genuine transformation. Max stood at a crossroads, aware that words alone would no longer carry him forward. For too long, his reputation had been tied to profit-driven ventures that ignored the very people who powered them. Now, with a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve, he committed himself fully to a new path, one rooted in social justice and genuine business integrity. This transformation was not superficial, it required a fundamental reshaping of how he operated and thought about success. His partnership with Elena marked the beginning of this journey. Elena, a seasoned activist and strategist, brought to the table a wealth of knowledge about community engagement and ethical frameworks. Together, they envisioned a venture that didn't prioritize profits above all else but instead focused on creating a sustainable impact on both employees and the wider community. Their initiative was designed to be a model where business acumen met a deep commitment to fairness and equity. Max's first step was to take a hard look at his existing business portfolio. He realized that many of his investments and partnerships were incompatible with his emerging values. Some ventures exploited labor or contributed to environmental degradation, and others were tied to opaque practices that bred inequality. The decision to sever ties was painful but necessary. He publicly divested from several key projects and distanced himself from certain influential partners who refused to align with his new direction. This break wasn't met with universal approval. In fact, it provoked a backlash. Former allies accused Max of betrayal, labeling him a sellout or naive idealist chasing an impossible dream. The criticism stung, especially when it came from those he once considered friends. Yet, Max remained undeterred. He understood that true change rarely comes without resistance and that staying true to his convictions meant accepting the fallout. With Elena's steadfast support, Max began to build the framework for their new venture. They focused on creating policies that ensured fair wages, equitable opportunities for advancement, and transparent communication throughout the organization. Sustainability was a core pillar, not just in environmental terms but in how the business treated its people, valuing diversity, providing support, and fostering a culture of respect. To bring this vision to life, Max leveraged his knowledge of market dynamics and operational efficiency. He crafted a business model that balanced financial viability with social responsibility. It was a delicate equilibrium, requiring careful budgeting and innovative approaches to funding. Rather than seeking the fastest path to profit, Max and Elena prioritized steady growth, investing in employee development and community partnerships. As the venture gained momentum, Max faced the challenge of changing perceptions not just among critics but within his own industry. Many were skeptical, viewing the initiative as a passing trend or a marketing ploy. Max knew that earning genuine trust would take time and consistent action. He committed to transparency, regularly sharing progress and setbacks alike, opening the doors of his company to scrutiny and dialogue. Throughout this process, Max's leadership style evolved. Where once he had relied on authority and control, he now embraced collaboration and empathy. He listened more than he spoke, valuing input from employees at all levels. This shift created a workplace atmosphere where creativity flourished and loyalty grew. Max began to understand that empowering others was essential to sustaining the change he envisioned. Elena played a crucial role in maintaining this momentum. Her experience navigating social justice movements helped the venture avoid common pitfalls and stay grounded in its mission. She encouraged Max to confront difficult questions about privilege and power within their own operation, pushing them to be honest about where improvements were still needed. Their partnership became a model of how business and activism could intersect productively. Despite these advances, Max could not ignore the lingering doubts within himself. Moments of self-reflection brought questions: was this new path truly sustainable? Would he be able to withstand the pressures of his former network's disapproval? Could he maintain the balance between ethical ideals and practical realities? These uncertainties tested his resolve, but each small victory reinforced his belief in the work they were doing. The impact of Max's transformation began to ripple beyond his immediate circle. Employees reported higher job satisfaction, and some clients expressed admiration for the company's values-driven approach. Media outlets picked up on the story, framing it as an inspiring example of how business leaders could adapt to contemporary demands for responsibility and fairness. Slowly, Max's reputation began to shift from that of a profit-first executive to a pioneer of ethical entrepreneurship. Importantly, the initiative sparked conversations in the broader business community. Competitors and peers started to question their own practices, some even reaching out to Max and Elena for advice on integrating social justice principles into their operations. The venture became more than a single company. It was a catalyst for a movement toward redefining what business success could look like. Max's journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid. He had taken the necessary steps to prove that his commitment was genuine and that change was possible even within traditionally profit-driven frameworks. With Elena by his side, he continued to refine the venture, confident that the difficult choices and sacrifices were worthwhile. Through this experience, Max learned that transformation is rarely linear or easy. It demands courage, humility, and a willingness to face criticism without losing sight of the ultimate goal. For him, the final plan was not merely a business strategy but a declaration of values, a testament to the power of aligning one's actions with deeply held principles. This new path, though challenging, offered the promise of a meaningful legacy far beyond financial success. Max's world was upended when his former business rival, Carter Lang, stepped into the spotlight with a scathing public accusation. Known for their bitter history, one marked by cutthroat tactics and ruthless competition, Carter wasted no time in challenging Max's newfound image. In a live broadcast that rippled across social media and news outlets, Carter accused Max of hypocrisy, painting him as a man who had merely polished a tarnished reputation to regain influence. He questioned the authenticity of Max's transformation, suggesting it was a calculated move designed to shield himself from scrutiny rather than a genuine change of heart. The fallout was immediate and intense. Headlines screamed about the confrontation, fueling a media frenzy that threatened to undo all the progress Max had made. Critics old and new seized on Carter's accusations, probing into Max's past misdeeds, failed deals, ruthless layoffs, and a relentless pursuit of profit at any cost. For a moment, it seemed as if the shadows of his former self would eclipse the man he was trying to become. Max felt the weight of it all, but amid the chaos, he found a surprising source of strength. Elena, his closest confidant and partner in this journey, stood unwaveringly by his side. She reminded him that true transformation wasn't about erasing the past but owning it fully. It takes courage to admit who you once were, she told him, but even more courage to show who you want to be. Determined to confront the storm head-on, Max organized a public forum where he could speak directly to his critics and supporters alike. The day of the event, the room was packed with journalists, stakeholders, and ordinary people eager to witness how Max would respond to the challenge. Cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium, the pressure mounting with every second. What followed was a moment of raw honesty. Max did not shy away from his past mistakes. Instead, he embraced them openly. He apologized not with vague platitudes, but with heartfelt sincerity for the damage he had caused through his earlier actions. He spoke candidly about the arrogance that had blinded him, the decisions that had hurt people, and the lessons he had painfully learned along the way. His vulnerability was striking. It disarmed many in the room, forcing even the harshest skeptics to reconsider their judgments. Max made it clear that his journey wasn't about seeking forgiveness for the sake of reputation, but about accountability and genuine growth. He acknowledged that the transformation was ongoing and that he was committed to doing the hard work required to make amends and foster real change. Elena's presence during the speech was more than symbolic. She had helped Max navigate this difficult process, providing both emotional support and a steady reminder that strength often lies in humility. Their partnership embodied the very change Max was advocating for: collaboration, honesty, and resilience. As Max spoke, something shifted. The defensive walls he had once built around himself began to crumble. No longer relying on the power of wealth or influence, his words carried weight because they were grounded in truth. He connected with his audience not as a tycoon or a magnate, but as a flawed human being striving to be better. The catharsis was palpable. When he finished, the room erupted not with derision or skepticism, but with applause and a palpable sense of respect. Some critics softened their stance, acknowledging the sincerity of Max's message. Others remained cautious but admitted that his willingness to confront his past was a step in the right direction. In the days that followed, the narrative surrounding Max began to shift. Media coverage highlighted his courage in facing the truth, and public opinion moved toward a more nuanced understanding of redemption and change. Max himself experienced a profound sense of liberation. The confrontation with Carter and the subsequent public reckoning freed him from the burden of his former identity. More importantly, Max realized that his true worth was not measured by the zeros in his bank account but by his ability to inspire others. He saw that by embracing vulnerability and demonstrating accountability, he could encourage meaningful change not just within himself, but across his community and industry. His story became a beacon for those struggling to reconcile their past with their aspirations for a better future. This defining moment marked the culmination of Max's transformation. It was not the end of his journey, but a powerful milestone that reshaped how he saw himself and his role in the world. By facing the past squarely and with humility, Max found freedom, and with that freedom came the opportunity to lead with integrity, empathy, and purpose. Max's new venture flourishes, marking a significant transformation in both his career and personal life. Once known for aggressive tactics and a relentless pursuit of wealth, Max now embodies a different kind of success, one rooted in ethical business practices and genuine purpose. His partnership with Elena has been instrumental in this change, bringing fresh perspectives and a commitment to social responsibility that revitalizes his approach. Together, they create a business model that prioritizes transparency, fairness, and community impact, proving that profitability and integrity are not mutually exclusive. The journey has been challenging. Max has had to confront his past mistakes, acknowledging the damage caused by his earlier ambitions and learning to rebuild trust with colleagues, clients, and the wider community. This self-reflection fosters a deep sense of humility, replacing his former arrogance with a grounded confidence. His reputation, once tarnished by greed and questionable ethics, now shines as an example of how redemption is possible when one chooses to lead with conscience rather than self-interest. In their work, Max and Elena focus on initiatives that promote sustainable development and social equity. Their business supports local entrepreneurs, invests in environmentally friendly technologies, and advocates for policies that protect vulnerable populations. Through these efforts, Max finds a renewed sense of fulfillment. The wealth he accumulates no longer serves as a status symbol but as a tool to fund meaningful change. This shift in priorities reflects a profound transformation in his values, one where success is measured not just by financial gain but by the positive difference made in people's lives. Max's personal growth also strengthens his relationship with Elena. Their partnership evolves beyond professional collaboration into one of mutual respect and shared vision. Elena's steadfast belief in doing what is right challenges Max to be a better man, and he, in turn, supports her unwavering commitment to social justice. Together, they navigate the complexities of balancing business ambitions with ethical considerations, often making difficult decisions that favor long-term impact over short-term profit. This alliance demonstrates the power of collaboration grounded in trust and common purpose. As Max's business expands, he uses his influence to advocate for broader social change. He participates in forums and policy discussions, championing reforms that encourage corporate responsibility and community engagement. His voice, once drowned out by cynicism, now carries weight because it comes from experience and sincerity. By sharing his story openly, Max inspires others in the business world to reconsider their own practices and embrace a more conscious approach to leadership. Throughout this transformation, Max grapples with the legacy he wants to leave behind. The pursuit of money that once defined his existence now feels hollow. Instead, he focuses on building something enduring, an enterprise that will continue to serve society and foster opportunities for future generations. This vision reshapes his ambitions, shifting them from self-centered goals to a broader commitment to humanity. Max understands that true power lies not in accumulating wealth, but in the capacity to learn, evolve, and make a lasting impact. Elena's role in this journey cannot be overstated. Her unwavering support and principled stance provide the moral compass Max needs to stay on course. She challenges him to think beyond immediate gains and consider the ethical implications of their decisions. Her presence is a constant reminder that business can be a force for good, and that integrity should never be sacrificed for convenience. Together, they embody a new model of leadership, one where success is inseparable from responsibility. The community, too, plays a crucial role in Max's renewed purpose. By engaging directly with local leaders, employees, and stakeholders, Max gains a deeper understanding of the social issues affecting those around him. This engagement fosters empathy and a sense of accountability, ensuring that the business remains connected to the real needs of the people it serves. This relationship with the community enriches Max's perspective and grounds his efforts in authenticity. Max's story serves as a powerful reminder that change is possible at any stage of life. His evolution from a man obsessed with wealth to one who values integrity and social impact challenges common assumptions about success. It shows that personal and professional growth often require confronting uncomfortable truths and making deliberate choices that align with one's core values. Max's transformation is not just about business strategy but about character development and the courage to redefine what matters most. In the end, Max's reflection on his journey is both poignant and hopeful. He recognizes that his previous mindset, which equated money with power, was flawed. True empowerment, he now understands, comes from the ability to adapt, grow, and use one's resources to uplift others. His legacy is no longer tied to the amount of wealth he amassed, but to the positive influence he leaves behind through ethical leadership, social advocacy, and a commitment to making the world a better place. Max looks at his business with pride, not because of the profits it generates, but because it stands as a testament to his growth and dedication to a higher purpose. He no longer sees himself as untouchable or invincible, but as someone who has earned respect through hard work, honesty, and perseverance. This newfound humility enriches his relationships and empowers him to continue striving for meaningful change alongside Elena. Their story concludes with a clear and inspiring message: success is not defined by wealth alone, but by the impact one creates and the values one upholds. Max's journey illustrates that true power lies in the willingness to transform oneself and to use that transformation to benefit others. This new legacy built on integrity, compassion, and social responsibility offers a hopeful vision for future generations, showing that the greatest achievement is not what you gain, but what you give back.